Come to Sweden and you might think they've got it all. A high standard of living, great healthcare and welfare, lovely cities and a strong economy. But the stresses and strains of the rich world are playing out here too. Immigration and citizenship have become hot topics as gang-related crime soared with bombings and shootings in once peaceful cities. The high cost of living has bitten too, with food and fuel prices going up sharply, prompting tax cuts paid for with borrowing. And all the while, Russia is on the doorstep. Defence spending is sharply up and every 18-year-old registers for the military. This is a country that no longer takes the good life for granted. Welcome to Stockholm, welcome to the home of the national broadcaster, Swedish Radio, with a lively audience and a panel of politicians waiting to take their questions. It is a fascinating time to be here and for our audience to quiz our panel, who are Karin Enstrom, the Secretary-General of the Moderate Party, which leads the country's coalition government. Morgan Johansson, an MP from the opposition Social Democratic Party, a former Deputy Prime Minister and the party's spokesman on foreign affairs. Mattias Karlsson, MP, is the International Secretary of the Swedish Democrat Party, which currently supports the centre-right coalition on an informal basis. And finally, Håkan Svenneling is an MP with the Left Party, and he's the party's foreign affairs spokesman. Welcome to you all. Let us go to our first question, and it comes from Javier Alexander.
My question is, should Sweden keep the current migration policies this government has implemented? Thank you.
Thank you, Javier. Immigration policy has been progressively tightened here in Sweden, where foreign-born individuals make up 20% of the population. In the last few days, a law was passed which changed the rules for citizenship, extending the waiting period, introducing a language and culture test, and tightening other rules as well. If you leave out Ukrainian migrants, migration fell last year, and the percentage of asylum seekers has fallen to 6% from 30% in 2018. That question then about the government and whether it should keep the migration policy. Let's turn to Karin Enstrom, who's the Secretary-General of the Moderates, the largest party of the coalition government. Karin, welcome.
Well, thank you, and thank you for that question. Well, I think you have described the situation in Sweden quite well. We have had a very big influx of migrators and asylum seekers. What we have failed to do is to integrate people coming to Sweden. And this has really created big problems for us. So what we have said, and there is I would say a quite vast majority says that we have to change this. We have to take care of the integration in Sweden. Of course, we must be open for people who need real refuge, but otherwise we have to have a very strict migration, and we will keep on taking the measures and change legislation when it's needed, because we must really take care of the people who are living here.
One of the key questions that appeared during the debate over the new citizenship policy was over those whose applications were in train, and suddenly the rules changed beneath their feet, that they were not allowed to continue under the old rules but had to reapply under the new rules. A fair number of people thought that was very unfair.
Of course, it's unfortunate when you change rules, but in this case, we thought that we really had to do it. There are no transitional rules because we have seen that there are security threats, people that could be security threats. So the recommendations from our secret police is that we need to take the new rules and apply them directly.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Morgan Johansson from the Social Democrats. Do you support the government's policy? You voted for it. It's, if I summarise it correctly, in principle, with disagreements over some of the details.
Yeah, and among them just the issue of transitional rules. There should have been transitional rules. And to say something about the situation, I mean, we had, as everybody knows, a very big influx of asylum seekers 10 years ago. 2015, 2016. I was Minister of Migration at that time, and I was responsible for tightening the legislation at that time. But after that, we got the numbers down from over 163,000 in 2015 down to 20,000, and then even more so. So we have actually had a control over this situation for almost 10 years. But now we feel that this government has taken this issue far too far. I mean, now they are actually expelling people, teenagers who's been here for many years, speak Swedish, have been going to school here. We have people working in elderly care, are integrated, but now we can read in the newspaper almost every day that now they are being expelled. And I don't think that is not about controlling migration, that is just being mean. I mean, you could have, you need to have other rules.
Thanks very much indeed. Matthias Karlsson of the Swedish Democrats, your party has risen to really astonishing numbers in Parliament, and central to its identity, I think it's fair to say, is, if not hostility, then scepticism about the level of immigration and a desire to change the number of immigrants. Has the government gone far enough in your estimation?
I mean, it was not just my party, it was the majority of the Swedish population for decades thought that the government and the ruling elites were going in the wrong direction on migration. And because the ruling elites did not listen to the population, we got very, very serious problems on many, many different areas of society. Security, law and order, welfare, and also general sense of community and trust within our society. The migration policies was tearing our country apart. So I think it's very, very important that we keep this more responsible direction of migration policy. And it worries me that even though we have so many problems, that there are still many parties in Parliament who want to go back to the more irresponsible policies we had in the past. Because if we do that, I think I fear for the future of Sweden, actually.
Nearly 90,000 migrants came into Sweden in the latest figure. Is that figure too high?
I think the general principle should be that we should have a migration that benefits Sweden. For a very long time, we were thinking about everything else except for Sweden and the Swedish population when it comes to migration policy.
Thank you very much indeed. Håkan Svenneling from the Left Party. Should Sweden keep the current migration policy that's been implemented?
No, we shouldn't, because the immigration has been beneficial for us. It's led to Sweden being a stronger country. And we are now on the lowest level since I was born, and I'm maybe the youngest in this panel, but I'm still not that young. And what I see is I'm meeting teenagers that now know Swedish, has the education here in Sweden, they have jobs here, but they are not earning enough money, so they're being pushed out of the countries when they are 18-year-old, 20 years old, back to countries where some of them has really not so strong connections with. Maybe their parents have stronger connections to those countries. And this is not good for Swedish economy or Swedish morality. But we still also should get people a chance to be Swedish citizens. Today there are a long process. If you fell in love with a Swedish woman or man, a long process before you can be a Swedish citizen. And we shouldn't have it that way.
Thank you very much indeed. I want to go back to... Thank you. I want to go back to our questioner, Javier, and then to the audience. I should say to our wider audience, watching or listening, we do not select our audience. They are a first-come, first-served audience, so they may well not be representative of the wider Swedish population. That's no insult to you. We thank you for coming. Javier, what did you make of what you heard?
I agree with Morgan Johansson a bit, that we obviously should take care of people who need to flee wars and persecution. A perfect example is Ukraine, but as well that we have to take care of the people who are already here, because we have big integration problems. So for now we need a restrictive policy, but then in the future we can see what is best for Sweden and what necessities we need, and then maybe we can open up again.
But you're broadly happy with the new rules, which are tightening the rules on citizenship?
I don't like seeing my neighbors and classmates who have been here for 10, 15 years speak perfect Swedish, have families, friends, built their lives here, being deported now.
Javier, thank you very much indeed. Can I hear from the audience? I've got the gentleman in white.
Thank you very much. My name is Batulumayo Nsuvuga. I am a master's student. I came here as a refugee, and I am a refugee. So this matter really touches my heart. And I also believe that people who commit crimes must be punished for the crimes they commit. But when a system decides to generalize everyone, every immigrant, and almost think they are criminals, it becomes a challenge for the future of a country which relies mostly on immigrants, because I go to hospitals and you will find all of them have come from different places of this world. So I sincerely hope that Sweden reconsiders the path that they have taken, because it is self-destructive in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your point. Any more on this topic from our audience?
My name's Beatrice. I think it's interesting to sit here as an immigrant to Sweden who learnt Swedish, who works in Sweden, who pays taxes, who has integrated myself into Swedish culture, who appreciates Sweden and Swedish culture, to have the rug pulled out from underneath me and be told that, no, it's not okay, you can't be Swedish yet. We're going to give you some extra steps. And it really doesn't feel so Swedish as an attitude.
Thank you very much indeed. That's good. Leave it there. Yeah. Karen Enstrom from the governing moderates, you defended the change in the rules for those waiting for citizenship. Well, one says they've had the rug pulled under their feet. Why is that fair? In what world is that fair?
We must higher the requirements for receiving a Swedish citizenship, because we have seen fraud, we have seen people really using the system. Unfortunately, the majority are hardworking, doing their best. So unfortunately, among people applying for citizenship, there are risks and threats. And this is a recommendation from the Swedish police and the Swedish secret police. And they have really recommended saying you should use the new legislation as soon as possible. And I understand that this affects people's lives, but this is a decision that we have been taking, saying we have to implement them as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Morgan Johansson, you said you wanted a quick word at the end of this.
I don't think you should change rules during the process. I mean, that's why we voted for this transitional.
Thank you. Let's go straight to our next question.
My name is Magnus Svensson. Last year, my son joined the military, the Swedish Army, and he has since decided to pursue a career within the defense forces. My question is, as Sweden now is increasing its military to meet NATO standards, how do we convince a completely new generation that has grown up in peace and freedom to pursue a military career with potential sacrifices compared to a private career path?
Magnus, thank you very much indeed. And I'm sure many in the panel and the audience will wish your son the very best. Karen Enstrom, Secretary General of the Moderate Party, you are or were a captain in the Amphibious Corps.
I still
You
am,
still
actually,
are.
but I have a leave of absence.
Okay.
It's extremely important and good question, since we don't have maybe painful memories from war times. We have been in peace for many, many years. On the other hand, I think now the upcoming generation is now seeing war quite near. They see their, elder friends and maybe brothers and sisters doing their military training. So my view is that we're going to need more people. We need to train more soldiers, we need more officers, we need people working for the armed forces, but maybe not as a soldier or with a gun in their hand. So we have to strengthen this whole sector. So I think we have to do this together and explain why this is important. Maybe we are not agreeing on everything in this panel, but there is a very, I would say, broad and strong support for defense, increased defense spending, and that this is one of the main tasks for a government to secure their population and our territory. And there is a very broad support in the parliament and among the Swedish public that we should do so.
Why is it important now that there are more people in service in Sweden? I know the country joined NATO after decades of neutrality, and the decision has been made to increase defence spending very sharply. I mean, from 2.4% of GDP to 2.8%. But why do you need a bigger army, and what do you need to persuade people to take the path that you took?
It's not just only the number of people, of course. It's about technology. It's about how you use all the weapon systems.
And you
to
sense
an
a
army.
much greater threat
Yes,
than there
we do.
was.
Yes, we do.
And that threat is from Russia.
Indeed, it is.
Thank you very much indeed. Håkan Svenneling from the Left Party. Your party opposes membership of the NATO military alliance, but broadly supports increased defence spending. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it's not because NATO has set any criteria for us, it's because the tension is rising in our region, and we need to see Russia as a threat to Sweden, and we see it already today with, for example, jamming and spoofing of our GPS signals in the Baltic Sea area and even on land. So it's really a threat there that we need to tackle, and therefore it's important that we put in more efforts in it. And one of the efforts that we have done is to reintroduce the conscript army and also made it for female. And I think that's one of the really good decisions that we made. So we see a whole generation that are obliged to apply for military service. And we also have missions now in Latvia. We are on our way to have a mission in Finland. And we need to cooperate with our neighboring countries to protect the Baltic Sea area.
Thank you very much indeed. Morgan Johansson from the Social Democrats. The question about convincing a generation of young Swedes that a military career is more rewarding than a private one.
Actually, I think conscription is one of the answers to that. And by the way, I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes that Sweden has done was to shut down conscription. And we did that in 2008. When I did my military services 30 years ago, I was among another almost 40,000 young men at that time who did that every year. And imagine if we could have had 10 years or 15 years where we haven't had conscription, if we could have had 40,000 people doing that for 10 years, that we would have 500,000 people right now with this military training.
Matthias Karlsson from the Sweden Democrats.
I think this issue has many answers. Conscription, of course, is one, but we also want people to, as you mentioned, your son, go further and become perhaps an officer and keep serving our defense forces for a long time. And I think then it goes down to material issues, of course. We need to take care of our personnel, to pay them correctly, to give them thanks for their sacrifice and what they're doing. But I also think that to get people to do that, we need to reinstall more of a patriotism and a sense of duty in the Swedish society among young people. Sweden has been a very progressive society for a very long time for different reasons. And words like patriotism and duty has been almost like swear words, like really, really bad words. But I think in order to persuade young people to choose a military career, we first need to teach them to love their country and to know what they're defending. And of course, it's a country in itself, its culture, its traditions, but also, of course, our democracy, our freedom, and to really educate young people to cherish that. And I think that's the very first step to convince a young person today to sacrifice their life and to perhaps go into military service for many, many years.
Matthias, thank you very much indeed. I want to hear from our questioner, if I could, from Manus, whose son is now serving full-time in the military.
Good answers. The reason I think this is a critical issue and a must-win battle is because you can't just go out on the market to recruit a colonel or a general. So you have to recruit, maintain, and keep people and staff.
Let's go to our next question.
My name's Jennifer Tovry. I'm a teacher here in Sweden for the last 15 years. So my question is, as Sweden has moved towards a market-driven school system and has heavily increased administrative tasks, has that devalued the profession to a point where we can no longer compete with our neighbors?
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. We need a little bit of background here because the market-driven system that Jennifer refers to is the introduction, a few decades ago now, of private schools operating within the state sector. And there's a remarkable number of those private schools now at both primary and secondary level. At the same time, and not necessarily as a result of, Sweden has seen a fall in its results for maths, literacy and science in the international PISA tests. The aim of bringing private schools in was to bring an element of competition into the system, but the schools have attracted a fair amount of criticism. Let's start with Håkan Svenneling from the Left Party. Håkan.
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer's description of the Swedish system. I think it's in many ways very extreme, and we are sort of the only country that has this sort of extreme form of this system. And it's market-based, and a lot of our resources that we put in our welfare system that go into profit for the owners. And the owners of these big school companies, industry level of big schools that producing and try to recruit pupils by giving them a computer or saying if you go here you will have greater grades and so on. So the system has really led to pupils eating less good food, having less educated teachers. Where the schools are established are in office buildings. All those sorts of things are parts of this market-driven system, and we need to get rid of it.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Matthias Karlsson from the Sweden Democrats. Has Sweden moved towards a market-driven school system?
There is a lot of things to unpack on this issue. First of all, the main reason why grades are dropping in Sweden and knowledge are dropping is because of the migration policy. You can, you can laugh all you want, but I urge everyone who are interested to Google it. It's actually true. You can see it that because it's natural that when you arrive to a country, you don't know the language. You come from a different school system. So the main struggle is with the pupils with a migrant background. If you look at, for example, results in natural science and math among Swedish-born children, they are actually doing great. We're on top of the world. So it's a very complicated issue. When it comes to the free schools, first of all, I'm in principle very much in favor of that. I would rather much be able to, by myself, as a parent, choose the school that I want my child to go to, than, for example, Håkan Svenneling's movement, where some people still call themselves communist, be able to decide what kind of school my child should go to. So I think it creates an opportunity for to have a multitude of different kind of pedagogics, where you as a parent get more to say about where your child should spend your hours.
The point of controversy, I think, is not in having variety in the system, but it's having profit in the system, and that private schools derive
but I
profit
think
from this.
it is just the fact of the matter is that if you don't have any possibility to do profit, you won't have the variety. You only have one school to go to. You're forced to go to that school. If you don't like it, tough luck, and the people who are deciding over it are left-wing politicians in the local parliament. I don't want to go back to that system at all.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you very much indeed. Karin Enstrom from the governing Moderate Party.
When we went to school, it was exactly like that. You were like directed to one school nearest you, whether you liked it or not, whether it was, well, you couldn't choose anything. The only persons who could choose was people with very large pockets, with a lot of money. Then you could choose. So when this was introduced, it was like I would say a revolution when it comes to education and the schooling system. But of course, there has been many bad examples. So I think it's quite clear that we have to regulate it. We have to be controlling this better. And that's what we are doing now. Everything from the grading system to how transparent it is. You can look into the school. But to just take away all the alternatives, saying you cannot earn 1 Swedish krona on this, I think that would be a bad way. The problem is not the profits. The problem is that we have schools which are bad, both private-driven and public-driven.
Thank you very much. Morgan Johansson from the Social Democrats.
At the same time that our children are learning less and less, they are getting higher and higher grades. And what is that? I mean, it has come so far that university here in Stockholm on Trade and Commerce are saying that we can no longer trust the grades anymore in order for our students to apply for our university. So we have to have tests instead. So this whole system, that comes from a system where you can make money if you are giving children better grades than they should have had. It's easy to understand that if you built in incentives like that, that is the result that you have. So it is very much problem with this system. I mean, there is a reason why Sweden is the only country in the world that has for-profit schools. And we are not talking about forbidding the possibility to choose schools, but maybe we should have it as other countries in the world that can choose from municipality schools, from public schools, but also from non-profit schools. That works in the rest of the world. Why shouldn't that work in Sweden?
Morgan, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm afraid that's it for World Questions Sweden. A big thank you to this month's panel. Thanks also to our wonderful questioners and all the contributors to our debate here at Swedish Radio in Stockholm. And of course, thanks to everyone watching all around the world. Goodbye.